Hey sweeties, welcome back to Queer Cosplayers Family Kitchen. It is now November, and so we get to finally get to our special surprise theme for the month of November. And sweeties, this is going to be very interesting. It is officially Go Woke Month. That is right, sweeties. All month long, we are going to be paying tribute to two very special films that everyone accused of being very woke, and we're expecting to go broke, quite frankly, but wound up becoming very big successes, shall we say. And those are going to be the Barbie movie and Superman 2025. So, to start out with, we're going to be doing two dishes that are from the official Superman cookbook, and also going to be topping them off with two dishes from the official Barbie cocktail book. So to start things off, we are taking a trip to Smallville, and we are going to learn how to make Martha Kent's homemade apple pie. So sweeties, without further ado, let's get to it. Alright sweeties, so with any pie, you're going to start with the pie crust first, and so we are going to start with the dry ingredients. So in this mixing bowl, I've got 1 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I've got a half a teaspoon of salt and 1 1/2 teaspoons of powdered sugar. So taking a whisk, we are just going to whisk the ingredients together like so until they are combined. Cut. Alright sweeties, so we've got this nice and blended. So we are going to take 4 tablespoons of butter, or half a stick. We're going to want to make sure it's nice and chilled. I always like to cube it when we're about to do this. Then we're also going to take 2 tablespoons of shortening. Also make sure it's nice and chilled, like so. Stuck mine in the fridge for a bit. Alright, then we're going to want to cut this into the dough using our trusty pastry cutter. So once again, you're going to want to stick it in like so and do a twisting motion. So whenever you do this, it's always handy to have a table knife with you so you can kind of cut the butter off of the pastry cutter like so. And then just kind of keep working at it. You're going to want to keep going and kind of keep up that twisting motion until the mixture looks, or until the butter and shortening look kind of like small peas. All right. Yep. So that's looking like little peas. So next we are going to need a 1/4 cup of ice water. So we're going to want to add a little bit at a time, like so. Then also using our pastry cutter, we're going to want to cut the dough in like so. So add a little bit more water. Yep, and then just keep repeating this process until you're out of water, and the dough should just hold together. Action. All right, sweeties, so we are set for the next step. We've got a pretty good dough formed here. Now we're going to want to turn it out onto a lightly floured surface. I've got a cutting board here. So we are going to put it out like so. Looks like we've got just about everything. Gonna take my wedding ring off here. Then we're going to want to form it into a bowl, or into a ball, like so. All right. So if you've got a little loose flour like that, it really shouldn't be a problem, as long as you can still get this nicely shaped dough ball. Alright sweeties, so now we are going to be preparing it to go into our pie dish. I've got a rolling pin, so we are going to want to roll it out to about 1/8 of an inch thick. If it starts to stick to the rolling pin like it did just there. You can kind of sprinkle some of the loose flour on it like so. There we go. So again, you want to roll it out so that it is thick enough that it's going to lay over the pie dish with about an inch overhanging. Action. All right, sweeties. So we've got our pie crust. This is honestly a little honesty. This is my first time trying to make a pie, so I wasn't able to get it quite as long as I wanted, but I was able to get it covering most of the pie dish. So, sweeties, I guess we're all learning during this video. So, once your pie crust is finished, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 425 degrees, and then you're going to stick your pie crust in the fridge until your until your filling and topping is ready to go in the oven. All right, sweetie, so we've got our pie crust in the fridge. Now it is time to make the apple pie filling. So to start out with, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of tablespoons, I'm sorry, of apple cider vinegar. Okay, there is 1. And 2. Okay, seal that back up. Then we are going to add a half a cup of dark brown sugar. A little spoon here, try to get this in. There we go. That should be good. Alright, we are going to add a half a cup of dark brown sugar. Try to get that excess back in there. Then we are going to add 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Alright, 1 and 2. Seal that back up. Then it is going to be 1 teaspoon of ground ginger. And there we go. Alright, then using a spoon, we're just going to give it a stir so we can get kind of, I think the word the cookbook used was a syrup. So we just want to stir it until all of the ingredients are combined. Action. All right, we've got a nice syrup in there. So now we are going to need to add our apples. Now, the book recipe calls for 3 Granny Smith apples and 3, had a couple of options, 3 Fuji apples, 3 Pink Lady apples, or apples of that nature. So I ended up going, however, I spoke to my mom, who is a master pie maker, and she said that for apple pies, one thing you want to do is try to throw in some Honeycrisp there. So I altered the recipe a little bit, and I went with 2 Granny Smith apples, 2 Fuji apples, and 2 Honeycrisp. So we are going to pour a total of 6 apples in, like so. There we go. And we are going to start mixing these with a spoon so we can get them all coated with the syrup. Action. All right, so they are nice and coated, and now that they are, we also want to add 3 tablespoons of flour. So once again, I've got that in there, 3 tablespoons. We are just going to try to mix them in as best as we can, kind of trying to toss them like so. Kind of force the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. All right, sweeties, so we've got our pie crust, we've got our filling. Now it's time to do our topping. And this is going to be pretty simple. It only requires 4 ingredients. So we are going to start with 1 cup. Get quarter cup that I leave in there out. Actually, we are going to start. Either one of these requires 1 cup, but we are going to start with 1 cup of brown sugar. All right, there we go. All right. So 1 cup of brown sugar, like so. Then we are going to do 1 cup of flour. There we go. Get that mixed and get my brown sugar back into my container here. There we go. Oh, get the flour sealed back up. Then we are going to need a 1/2 cup of rolled oats. There we go. Going to give these a mix. Yeah, the brown sugar is still a little dry, so you might need to crumble that up with your hands like so. Action. All right, now I've just added our last ingredient. That is a 1/2 cup or 1 stick of butter, like so. So now, using a fork, we're going to want to stir this until it's mixed, stirring for about 1 to 2 minutes. All right, sweeties, well, we've got our pie crust, we've got our filling, and we've got our topping. So now it is time to put them all together. So we are going to put our apples in, try to make a nice even layer like so. All right. Action. All right, so sweeties, it looks like there was a lot more apples than I could actually fit into my pie pan. I don't know if I was supposed to go with a bigger pie pan or what, but I do have some leftover apples that I am going to take my wife's advice and probably just make into an apple crisp. Save those for later. But now we need to take our topping here. Spread this over the pie, like so. All right. There we go. All right, gonna take a little bit to even this out. There we go. All right, now I've got Wanda preheated to 450 degrees, so we are going to stick this in for the first leg of the journey for about 20 minutes. Action. All right, sweeties, it's been 20 minutes, so now what you're going to want to do is take a sheet of aluminum foil, lay it over top of the pie, and then reduce the heat down to about 350 degrees, then let it cook for about another 35 minutes. Action. Oh, sweeties, that pie came out of the oven, or just finished cooling a few minutes ago, and it smells fantastic. This turned out so well. It's still pretty warm, so I still want to let it cool for just a little bit longer, but if it tastes half as good as it looks, I think this turned out beautifully. So, thank you so much for tuning in for our kickoff episode of Go Woke Month. So we are planning on alternating recipes. So the first one was Superman. We are going to do the next one with Barbie. So look forward next week to a lot of pink. I cannot wait to start exploring these recipes with you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye, sweeties. Mwah.